Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News, and my name is Bahram Gaffarov. Uzbekistan's tourism region has initiated 812 investment projects worth over $1.3 billion. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev was presented with information on the projects on Tuesday.
Some 188 projects have been implemented in the year to date, with more than 1,700 new jobs created. The tourism branch of the Republican Specialized Scientific and Practical Medical Center for Nephrology and Kidney Transplantation was put into operation. Construction of a new railway bridge across the Amudarya has begun. The region plans to implement around 273 projects in the industry, 277 in the service sector, 262 in agriculture. These projects are set to create more than 23,000 jobs. Exports are to amount $65 million. The government plans to double the level of cotton processing, lift the capacity of yarn production from 47,000 to 104,000 tons, expand fabric production from 9,000 to 49,000 tons, and raise ready-made garments output from 47 million to 152 million pieces. 6 projects scheduled for the region's automotive industry are to produce 100 types of auto body and spare parts. These goods are expected to replace $20 million worth of imports. There are 85 projects planned in the building materials industry. In agriculture, work has begun on the widespread introduction of laser leveling and drip irrigation. The goal has been set to bring the yield of cotton to 35 centners per hectare through these measures, and 66 centners of wheat per hectare. Some 20 projects aim to increase the livestock population. 24 projects are planned in the poultry farming and 8 in the field of industrial development of fisheries.
The Uzbek government is intending to bond its ties with the European Union states as President Shavkat Mirziyoyev on Tuesday received a group of international consultants. See the details in our next report.
The sides initially touched upon the study of the best foreign practices in promoting the reform program, improving the investment climate and business environment, raising direct investment and advanced technologies to the economy of Uzbekistan, and forming effective mechanisms for partnership with the European business community. The guests highly appreciated and expressed their full support for the transformation program being implemented in Uzbekistan, the achievements and concrete results of the socio-economic policy implemented in the country in the difficult conditions of the coronavirus pandemic, as well as significant progress in the integration of Uzbekistan into global and regional economic processes were particularly noted. The consultants also noted that due to the consistent transformation of the economy and increasing its openness to foreign capital, there are wide opportunities for increasing investment and innovation cooperation with the EU countries.
Turkey and Uzbekistan on Monday launched a joint military exercise in Uzbekistan's southeastern Termiz province, according to a statement by Uzbekistani Defense Ministry. An opening ceremony was held for the joint Uzbek-Turkish military exercise in the artillery range. The soldiers of 2 countries conducted a passing ceremony with the playing of national anthems. Many Turkish and Uzbek military officials participated in the exercise, wishing success to the 2 countries. As part of the joint military exercise, the 2 countries' soldiers will make exercises in many subjects such as special shooting, infighting and survival in harsh conditions, and also organizing joint sports competitions. The joint military exercise will end on March 27. Russia's Federal Service for Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance, Rosselsхознадзор, and Uzbekistan's State Plant Quarantine Inspection examined the measures to ensure the safe tomato exports complying with Russian standards. In November last year, the Russian agency introduced a ban on the import of Uzbek tomatoes and peppers, claiming that products contained Toboma virus. Starting from March 3, 2021, the country allowed the tomato import from 6 of Uzbekistan's enterprises. The parties agreed that the export-oriented vegetables are due to the PCR analysis. Uzbekistan state inspectors are to monitor the shipment of tomatoes directly from enterprises and issue an inspection certificate confirming the safety of products and ensuring the vegetables are free from tomato brown Rugose fruit virus. Based on these acts, Uzbekistan plans to issue phytosanitary certificates. Besides, the Republic investigates the case of export-oriented product contamination and plans to inform Rosselsхознадзор of research results. Russian Federal Service stressed that it welcomes the measures taken by Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan plans to abolish monopoly on the sale of state shares, the country's agency for state asset management reported. My colleague has more.
For decades, such shares have been listed on the stock exchange only through a single broker, Mulk Sarmaya Brokerlik Üye. This has negatively affected the creation of a level playing field, said the agency. Now this practice will be abolished, and in the process of offering and selling, a competition will be held to attract brokers. It can involve 44 professional investment intermediaries operating in the country, it added. The agency expects that new reforms would ensure an open and transparent privatizations. The selection process for brokers, first of all, is to consider the experience in the stock market, the financial situation, the tariffs of the intermediary services, among other criteria. Uzbekistan unveiled its extensive privatization program in October 2020, with some of the country's largest companies to go either fully or partly private.
Uzbekistan's public debt by the end of 2021 is projected to reach $28.3 billion, 45.3% of GDP, according to the Budget for Citizens report compiled by the Ministry of Finance. Last year, it was $23.3 billion and $17.8 billion in 2019.
Uzbekistan's total public debt to continue its growth, says Finance Ministry. Despite the growth dynamics, the public debt remains moderate at a level that is safe for macroeconomic stability, the report says. The public debt in 2020 was mainly used to finance additional budget expenditures to overcome the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Uzbekistan's external debt is forecast at $25.7 billion at the end of 2021. $18.6 billion is to be raised on behalf of the government. The government plans to spend external borrowing to finance the state budget deficit, totaling $2.2 billion, and to implement new investment projects worth $3.3 billion. The external debt limit for this year has been set at 60% of the annual GDP.
Reducing the air pollution in Tashkent with WHO recommendations is a hard task, said Uzhydromet, weather forecasting agency. It's been trying to tackle the issue as IQ Air, a Swiss air technology company, has ranked the city 18th among 92 world capitals in its World Air Quality Report. Uzhydromet said the pollution rate in 2020 was 14% less than a year before, as hundreds of factories were forced to suspend their activity due to the pandemic. But this year, the pollution rate is expected to soar again. The forecasting agency reports that Uzbekistan is characterized by an increased content of suspended particles in the atmospheric air due to natural features such as dry climate, sandy loam and loamy soil. The desert climate has a significant effect on the formation of suspended particles and their behavior in the atmosphere. Therefore, to make air pollution in line with WHO recommendations is very problematic, Uzhydromet added. Delhi is the most polluted city in the world, according to IQ Air.
The U.S. Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, in interview after interview over the weekend, made clear the administration's policy on the southern border. Migrant families arriving seeking asylum would be deported to Mexico. But the message from the top is muddled by the reality on the ground. Temporary migrant processing centers seen in newly released video in Texas are overwhelmed, and thousands of families have been released into the United States in recent weeks. The varied handling of families is bewildering migrants and causing frustration among both immigration advocates and border agents. It has also left Democratic President Joe Biden open to criticism from Republicans that his mixed messaging at the border is encouraging more people to cross. Over the weekend, the U.S. announced an $86 million contract to house some migrant families deemed vulnerable in U.S. hotels for processing. The contract is part of a new program managed by nonprofit organizations as an alternative to federal family detention centers. Another example of the challenges and expensive solutions, some Mexican states are no longer accepting families with young children. The U.S. has thus put some families on jets and flown them from the Rio Grande to El Paso, where they are then sent across the border to Ciudad Juarez. And the migrants, most of them from Central America, are still coming. One man from Honduras, who said his name was Marvin, told Reuters he was determined to make it to America.
The mission, God willing, is to arrive at the border and work there. Later on, we'll see if we can jump to the other side. Al otro lado.
Where in the United States would you like to go?
Donde Dios lo lleve.
Wherever God takes us, we don't have a set place to go. Wherever we land, that's where we will stay.
North Korea fired off 2 short-range missiles over the weekend, U.S. officials said on Tuesday, marking the first such test since the start of the Biden administration. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed on Wednesday they had detected the tests and monitored them in real time, though they did not acknowledge them until days later. Washington has played down the tests and insisted it will remain open to dialogue with Pyongyang. The tests come after North Korea refused repeated U.S. attempts at contact since mid-February. U.S. President Joe Biden was asked about the tests by reporters in Ohio on Tuesday.
We have learned that there's nothing much has changed.
A top U.S. general last week warned North Korea may soon begin flight testing an improved design for its intercontinental ballistic missiles, a provocative move that would further inflame tensions with Washington. North Korea hasn't tested an ICBM or nuclear weapon in over 3 years, but has continued testing short-range missiles since talks with the Trump administration broke down in 2019. It's since developed its nuclear and ballistic missile programs over the past year in violation of international sanctions, according to UN reports. Senior U.S. officials say the Biden administration is in the final stages of a full review of U.S. policy towards North Korea and will host discussions with allies Japan and South Korea next week.
2 deaths caused by Australia's worst floods in decades were reported on Wednesday. It's the first deaths linked to wild weather in recent days. The bodies of 2 men were found in separate cars trapped by floodwaters in Sydney's northwest and in the neighbouring state of Queensland. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Scott Morrison flew over many of the affected areas of Sydney on Wednesday and pledged to support those affected by the disaster.
The damage will indeed be great, and the government will be supporting each and step of the way as we go through the clean-up and the recovery process in partnership with the New South Wales Government.
Torrential rain has sparked flash flooding, bulging rivers and major dam overflow. More than 40,000 people have been forced to evacuate. The scale of the damage is still being tallied, but the country's peak insurance body estimates damage claims to around $193 million across the states of New South Wales and Queensland. And it's not over yet. Forecasters said the weather system will shift to the island state of Tasmania on Wednesday.
This team of scientists call themselves the virus hunters.
Essentially, I am a bat ecologist. I've been working on bats for more than 20 years now.
For nearly a decade, bat ecologist Philip Alviola and his team have been studying bats and how their viruses can affect humans. They've caught thousands of bats in the Philippines for analysis, and with the help of scientists from Japan, they've detected new viruses. The team ventures out into forests and caves where bats are known to roost and set up traps before sunset. In most cases, they would then take saliva and fecal samples before releasing them back into the wild.
We just finished setting up a mist net. So as you can see here, it's called the mist because the thread is made out of nylon. It's color black, and from a distance you can't actually see the net. So hence it's called it blends with the forest background. So we use this for capturing bats.
Their latest project involved developing a simulation model that can predict the dynamics of coronavirus in bats by analysing specific factors like time, climate, season and temperature, and their effects on viral transmissions and transmissibility to humans.
What we're trying to look into are other strains of coronavirus that have the potential to jump to humans. What are these areas that have the potential to be the ground zero for coronavirus infection? By using molecular techniques, molecular laboratory work, so we can determine if some of these coronaviruses have the potential to infect humans, or what you call as zoonotic to humans, that the ability of the virus to jump from an animal host to a human host.
Alviola admitted there were risks involved in hunting viruses, but said it does not deter him from studying it.
If we know the virus itself and we know where it came from, we know how to isolate that virus geographically. So we can implement some travel restrictions. We can prevent city to city, province to province transmission. I think our project has this amazing promise of possibly avoiding a next pandemic by determining where or possibly when the next pandemic will occur.
The global chip shortage seems to be spreading to truck makers. Shares in Sweden's AB Volvo tumbled on Tuesday, falling around 7%. That after it said the silicon drought left it facing a big hit to production in the second quarter. Volvo says it's cut output at plants in Belgium and Brazil. Deutsche Bank analysts estimate it will make about 16,000 fewer trucks over the period. Other analysts put the hit to earnings at over $400 million. Volvo says it now has little visibility into the chip supply issues. It predicted the shortage would start to hit other areas of the group's business. Semiconductors have been running short as consumer electronics brands mop up available supply amid booming demand. Chip makers prefer supplying Apple, Samsung and the like as they buy more advanced, higher margin chips. Car brands including Ford, Volkswagen and Honda have all suffered hits to production as a result.
Any hopes that this year's round of blockbuster films would kickstart the summer movie season have been dashed. Disney announced on Tuesday it was again delaying the release of Marvel's Black Widow by 2 months to July. The film, starring Scarlett Johansson, will also be offered simultaneously on its Disney Plus streaming service. Shares of AMC Entertainment, the world's largest cinema operator, tumbled 16% after the announcement. As part of a massive shake-up of its movie slate, Disney is delaying a whole handful of films, including Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, as well as Free Guy. In another blow for box office sales, the company is focusing more on its streaming service. Pixar's animated coming-of-age adventure Luca will launch exclusively on Disney+, and Cruella, which hasn't been delayed, will also be a simultaneous release. Other Hollywood studios have made similar moves to Disney. Warner Brothers is offering all of its 2021 theatrical films on the HBO Max streaming service on the same day. It has, however, agreed to keep to a more traditional release pattern in 2022, but like Paramount and Universal, it will be reducing the number of days films are shown exclusively in cinemas.
In a journey made under the most trying of circumstances, children as young as 2 years old are being smuggled across the U.S.-Mexico border without their parents. Almost 10,000 minors from Central America crossed the border illegally in February, nearly double the previous month's figures, according to U.S. Customs data. The spike comes after a shift in U.S. border policy when President Joe Biden announced his administration would not bar unaccompanied minors from entering the United States. Jorge Corden is a migrant from Guatemala who brought his 2 daughters to the U.S. border.
We crossed through the tunnel and they grabbed us from the U.S. side of the border and took us to immigration. When they saw the children's papers, they said that I had no power over them and they were going to take care of the children.
Traveling by bus, by boat, and even by plane, the smuggling trips can cost thousands of dollars per child and are often financed by parents or relatives already living in the U.S. Reuters interviewed over a dozen self-identified smugglers who said some migrant children have even been used as a decoy for the cartel's drug trafficking operations. Immigrant advocate Dylan Corbett says children who make it to the border could still be turned away.
Title 42 remains in place, and that's a highly consequential policy because it's resulting in the majority of asylum seekers being returned back. We cannot return children back by federal law. We have to ensure their safety. We have to prioritize them. They are a vulnerable population.
The Biden administration has struggled to house the rising number of unaccompanied minors. Critics say Biden's mixed messaging on immigration has only fueled further chaos and confusion at the border, resulting in a growing humanitarian crisis.
In the bowels of a ship, a team of scientists is listening to the sounds of the deep. And they've just heard what they're looking for. That's the sound of a group of whales enjoying a late-night feast. For scientists like marine biologist Tim Lewis, it's a boost to arguments that this remote area of the Indian Ocean should be protected.
Very little is known about the animals that live and feed here, so any information on the distribution of animals is really important.
The vessel is Greenpeace's Arctic Sunrise. It's on a mission to the Mascarene Plateau, more than 1,000 miles of underwater ridge jointly managed by the Seychelles and Mauritius. It's a conservation target partly because of the vast seagrass meadow at the Sayadamala Bank, which absorbs climate-warming carbon dioxide and provides a wildlife habitat. The whales also play a crucial role. They release tons of iron a year in their feces. That feeds CO2-absorbing phytoplankton. Dr. Kirsten Thompson, a lecturer in ecology at the UK's University of Exeter, thinks the Mascarene Plateau could be an important area.
The fact that we heard so many sperm whales, we've seen Bryde's whales today, and just being able to monitor this area, it feels like a real privilege because we're actually generating some of the first baseline data for this area on marine megafauna.
Computer modelling in 2020 estimated that 3,900 species may call the plateau home, making it a dazzling wildlife hotspot in the high seas. The UN is working on a treaty that could help protect such areas from a rising tide of marine traffic and fishing fleets. But advocates have expressed concerns that momentum has slowed amid the global health crisis.
But we still have the slide one at 3 o'clock.
The findings from the Greenpeace mission will add to calls for action as part of a broader push to protect at least 30% of the planet's land and oceans by 2030. Scientists say that target must be met to address the dual crises of climate change and biodiversity loss.
So far, these were the latest news for today. Goodbye. Take care.